Okay, fuck, shit. I look good though, okay? Okay, so this took me so fucking long to do that it's all just gonna be getting darker and darker as we go, because this took me like 2+ hours, so unless you look like this, don't complain about the lighting. Literally, when I get in drag, my personality fucking changes, and I'll probably swear more, I'll probably touch my hair more, flip my hair more, and use hand gestures and nodding stuff like I'm doing now. And it just comes naturally, and I don't know what it is. I think it's from like watching people do it, and then you just become like that. So if that bothers you, well, you get to meet Drag Will for this wrap up. Today, I'm doing my February wrap up, and there's a lot of books, but I feel like I didn't enjoy so many of them, so I would consider I didn't have a great reading month. But I think we're just gonna plow through. If I don't go too in depth on these, it's because I get shallower when I'm in drag. I just can't go into those deep, dark places and talk about serious shit. So let's just kiki, have a good time. I will do the graphic novels first, and then I'll jump into the physical books and audiobooks. So the first graphic novel I read of the month is Space Battle Lunchtime. This is the sequel to Space Battle Lunchtime 1. This one's called A Recipe for Disaster. This is such an epic, fantastic comedy, sci-fi space opera. It's about this girl who gets recruited for this television show where she's supposed to bake stuff in space, and it's just so funny because it's literally like a TV show, and it's always, every episode starts with what you missed last time on Space Battle Lunchtime. There's a gay romance. I highly recommend it. The art is just fucking fantastic. It's really good. And I'll be reading the next one possibly for, oh, there's the echo here in this part of the room. Weird. Next, I picked up Donut the Destroyer by Sarah Graylie. I have had an obsession with Sarah Graylie. She's my new bae, and I can't like stop reading all her shit. This is about our main character, Donut the Destroyer, and that's literally her name, like first name, middle name The, last name Destroyer, and she grows up in this family or this world where there's like good and evil, and Sarah Graylie illustrates like good and evil very well in her comic books, which is just so funny. She does it in a hilarious way. Her art style is fantastic. But Donut the Destroyer has grown up this family with these two super famous mega villains, and she's like, no, I want to be a hero, be like a good girl. And so she applies for this hero school, and shit goes down. It's really funny because it illustrates like the evil as like the normal way to be or the right way to be, and she's being such a rebel by being good, and it's just really funny and cute. I think I gave this 4 stars, I believe. I had some problems with it, but I don't remember what they are. You see this hair flipping? It's just, I'm living my dream. Okay, I also picked up these 4. Actually, I'm just gonna tell you these 4. It is Aya and Yup City. I gave this 3 stars. I gave Black Panther 2 stars. I just didn't understand what was going on. And Bitch Planet, I gave 3 stars. I think I understood it much more now than when I read the first one. This is the second one. And then we have Witchy. I gave this 5 stars. I'm obsessed with it, but it did feel kind of incomplete because they haven't continued it yet, and I don't know where to get my hands on the next one. As well as Minecraft. This is also by Sarah Graylie, but also John J. Hill and Sve Our Monster, which is an awesome name. And I got the second volume, which I'll hopefully be reading soon. These were, I'm mentioning them briefly because I did a whole graphic novel reading vlog, which I will link in the cards. I didn't finish Aya in that one, so I'll just tell you, like, everything I said in that video was definitely true. And the reason why I probably won't continue is just because it dragged on a bit, but you got to know the characters so well. So if you want to get like familiar with these characters and love them for all their flaws, I highly recommend that one. Then I picked up this one. This is an Adventure Time volume called Marceline the Vampire Queen. It is just a separate volume, and it's really cute. I found it, like, did I tab anything in this? No, I did not. It was just an enjoyable time. Like, I gave 4 stars. I enjoyed it a lot. I think it's a Bimo and Marceline adventure. Yes, it's a Bimo and Marceline adventure from Adventure Time, and there were like fun stuff in it, but it was quite straightforward and easy to read. The plot twist at the end was fantastic. But yeah, just like a good time if you like Adventure Time already. The last 2, I'm just so excited about it. I'm so excited about it. The first one is Zodiac Star Force. This is the second one, Cries of the Fire Prince. I think there's only 2 out yet, but I believe it's going to continue. This series is so underrated, and I just don't understand why more people just don't pick it up, because the characters are amazing. They're based on like the different zodiac signs, and they have these powers that like reflect the zodiac sign they are, and they like defeat evil and stuff. And my last critique of the last one was that there's no Capricorn, and in this one Capricorn comes and she's like like a black short-haired woman, the leader of the group, and she's so fucking kick-ass, and I feel like honored to be a Capricorn after I've seen the illustration of Capricorn in this one, which is a dumb critique, but I just got excited. I'm like, everyone whose star signs is not represented in this is gonna be so disappointed. But it was just a fun time. There's a sapphic romance in this. The characters are really fun, the relationships are really fun, and it's just a really good time. You can just tell it's like really well made and created, and it just packs in a lot in a really short time. So I just highly recommend picking up this comic book series if you're interested in comics and you haven't already. Adventure Time Volume 7. So I've decided to read like one of these every single month in the rest of the year to finish this Adventure Time comic series. I mean, there's many. There's also the ongoing, and then there's like the individual comics that are not related to the series. But these ones are kind of like in order, and you should kind of read them in order because they do sort of reference back in time. But this is by far the fucking best one. This one slayed. It killed it, and it was just so awesome. Okay, so it starts off with being this comic book collection of the main characters in Adventure Time has made their own comics, and they all have these like super cool style. Like this is BMO's. Peppermint Butler does like a cooking segment. Marceline has a different style. Of course, this is like PB's and OLSP, and the best one, this is Ice King, just black and white, and they're just so creative, and I just love that part already. Also, this is so unrelated, but actually it's not unrelated. I don't know why I say that. It's totally related. Here is Rainbow Unicorns, and it's all in Korean, so like I can't read it. So I'm just gonna, if you can, by some weird chance you're watching this and you speak Korean, oh my god, can you just get in touch with me, because I want this translated. I want to know what it is, but I just love that they did that because that makes total sense, you know? And then we have Finn's, and he like illustrates himself as this macho man, or Finn and Jake, they do it together. And then the actual story starts, and it's like the most coherent, thought out, amazing storyline ever like these comics had. So if you're interested in starting these but like don't want to get invested into the whole series, just jump straight to the 7th one. I got something in my eye again because it was such a blast. I adored it. Highly recommend it. I'm so wired. It sucks when you do your makeup like this and just dress up and I have no one to meet and go out with. And ooh, I almost forgot. So I read at least 2 new releases last month as well. One was The Leak and the other is Martian Ghost Centaur, which was 2 arcs that I got through NetGalley. I gave Martian Ghost Centaur 3 stars and The Leak 5 stars. So you know that movie, I'll put the movie here. It's like about this woman, standalone, I was gonna say standalone mom. Single mom, there we go. Single mom who has these 2 kids, and she really struggles to get a job because, this is the movie, I'm explaining the movie. She really struggles to get a job because she's never had one, and she's always been supported by her boyfriends. And she finally gets like a job at this law firm, and she notices that there's been like a lot of cases of like people getting cancers and nosebleeds and health stuff, and she like basically gets really invested and tries to solve this case. And it kind of turns out there's been a leak, like a toxic leak from this company that lives close to the city. And I watched this afterwards with my mom, and it was so, oops, that's the mic. It was such a fun time and I adored it. So The Leak is like the middle grade journalist version of that one. So instead of it being around being a lawyer, our main character is like she has her own journalist blog, and there is something weird that happens in the river, and she decides to write about it, and everyone is so concerned with her like breaking the rules and everything, but you know, people are actually getting sick from the contamination in the river. So it's a middle grade graphic novel, cli-fi, and it was a great time. I highly recommend it. I think it comes out 16th of March, and it comes out at the same day as Martian Ghost Centaur. And Martian Ghost Centaur is about this little town who's always relied on tourism, but the thing that made them famous has dwindled down, and so this little girl, or I think she's a teenager actually, decides to try to get the tourists back. Yeah, it's about her. I gave it 3 stars because it was a bit boring. I feel like I didn't really get what the point was. There was no like real clear message, even though the art was really amazing and the art really resonated with me. They both have amazing art, and I have an individual review of both of those, or a dual review, not an individual review, dual review that goes up on the release date because it's the same day. Those were all the comics and graphic novels. Okay, yes. Sweet. Now let's get into the actual books. So because I am fucking crazy and I just didn't know what I was thinking, I noticed that the 3 books that I was planning to read in the first week, which was the color theme for the Buzzwordathon, I noticed that it was black, purple, and white in the title, and I'm like, if I read a book with yellow in the title, those are the colors of the non-binary flag. So just for the shits and jiggles, I decided to read a book with yellow in the title as well. But I'll talk about these in the order that I read them. So the official pick was actually the color purple. So I've had this on my TBR for a really long time, but a couple of months ago I decided to save it for this prompt. And it was just fantastic. I gave it I think 4 or 4.5 stars. And I didn't know what this book was really, but it's gay. It's gay. And it was such a fun surprise. When I realized it, I'm like highlighting all the stuff, and I'm like, if someone tells me this book is not sapphic and gay and queer as fuck, I'm highlighting all this stuff to prove you that you're wrong. But it totally takes off, and it indulges in that part of it, which I just adored. I have to be honest, in the beginning when this started, it was hard for me to read because the violence, the rape, the abuse of our main character, Celie, was just so extreme and really, really hard for me to get through. And looking like this and talking about this book just feels so wrong. I don't know what it is, but this was fantastic. And if you're looking to read any modern classic or anything, like, I really recommend this one. And it just basically follows Celie in the time of segregation, or actually these 2 sisters. Celie, she gets pregnant twice with her dad, and her children disappear, and then she gets a new husband. And she takes care of his old children, and you follow Celie really becoming her own. And she writes, the whole book is written through letters. So in the beginning, Celie writes, Dear God, but afterwards she writes to her sister Nat, something with N, I feel like, Nettie. And Nettie has a different path. She ends up going to Africa as missionaries, and that whole plot line was just like a whole other thing, talking about corporations taking over small towns and indigenous communities, and there's so many things to be discussed in this, and I feel like it touched on so many topics. I feel like I've never read a book that really has such a diverse area, like a space for all these different things that it discusses, and I really adored it for that. It didn't completely click with me, and at the end it was really, really dragging. But it was just such a happy ending. So the first bit is definitely the hardest, and once you get through that, like, it's a ride. It's hard, but it always gets better towards the end. So, and the next one that I read was I was gonna read The Yellow Wallpaper, but then I found this other one called The Yellow Arrow, I believe, and it's a Russian it's the first ever Russian translated book I've ever read. So this is a Russian translated novella, and you follow this train and the people who live on the train, and you follow our main character living just his life on this train, and the train is a metaphor for life. And is there more to this book? I feel like there's something that I'm missing. They don't remember life outside of the train, and they think that their whole life is on the train, and there is a certain destination that they know it's gonna go off a bridge, I believe, but they don't really know anything outside of the train. Like, they don't know they can step off the train. And it's just like all these like tiny metaphors in around this plot. I was like pleasantly surprised by this. I think it's written in the 90s, and I think actually it's a reflection also of the political things going on in the Soviet Union, I believe, and a lot of things that happen around that. And there might be like bits and pieces that I didn't connect politics-wise. That kind of flew through over my head. But generally, this was such a ride to read. Ride, you get it? It's on the train. That was pun not intended, but also intended. The chapters were backwards, and I just really enjoyed it. It was a fun time. I gave it 4 stars, and if you want to read some like Russian translated literature, I recommend this one. And it's really short, and it's easy to read, and I really liked it. And it was speculative, which was great. After that, I picked up White N-Word, When Cornrows Were in Vogue and Other Thoughts on Cultural Appropriation by Lauren Michelle Jackson. This was great in so many ways. There's so many things I have not thought about when it comes to cultural appropriation. It talks about digital blackface and the way white people and just our general culture and online culture is just so fucking obsessed with black culture. And it is so extreme that we don't even really think about it. Can you imagine what the internet would be without memes created by black people, music that people use for TikToks, like created by black people? And it talks about so many things, like everything from black creators not being paid for their content and someone else benefiting off of it, to what's it called, drug statistics, and just like a lot of different stuff. It talks in the beginning, it talks a lot about Christina Aguilera, and I feel like this was like just very much for my generation, and maybe just like a bit older, because all the things I felt like was something that I've experienced throughout my whole life, and I've seen and I've lived through, and I just highly recommend checking these out. And I think you should check it out as an audiobook, also because the author really jumps to like from these different topics in a way that's not really like this red thread that goes through it. So in my opinion, it's structured quite chaotically, and it doesn't have like, this was the point of this whole book. It's just kind of, it's basically just and thoughts on cultural appropriation. So it gives you all these thoughts, and then it's like, okay, some of these things are like, it's not bad that black culture has become so popular. It's all about like what we do, and being aware of it is the first step. And that's why I think this book is so important, because once you're aware, then you can reflect on what to do with this information and how you contribute to this culture. Like I say like yes all the time. I say so many things that like originally comes from, you know, American black speech. So it's just most of the things like we say, we don't even know where they come from. And that's maybe the most problematic thing. Mike. Then I picked up Black Sun. So this one was sent to me by Rebellion Republishing, which I've had like a little connection with. But I think I've given 4 out of the 5 books I've gotten 2 stars from them. So I don't know how much they're actually benefiting from this little alliance that's going on. This is by Rebecca Rowan Horse. So it's been really popular lately, and this is sort of YA/adult fantasy. I've read a lot of fantasy in my time, and I have enjoyed it so much in the past. And so when I started this book, it was like relief and joy, and I felt so comfortable because I've been reading books like this so much. But then it just sort of went downhill from there. You know that feeling when you go home to your family. In the beginning, you're like, oh my God, I miss you so much. Like, we're just having a good time catching up, and you're just feeling all the love and how much you miss your family, and it's just been great. But then the longer you stay there, the more you realize why you don't live with your family anymore, and all the small things really gets to you. That was this book. So in the beginning, I got really excited about this being a fantasy, and I was like, wow, I'm really feeling comfortable with this writing, with these characters, like, and then I was just like, okay, but this is also why I don't read fantasy anymore, and all the reasons why I don't like fantasy just kind of also came up in this book, and it also reaffirmed that I did the right thing by not reading so much fantasy anymore. So it was both affirming but also a bit disappointing, because I was thinking like maybe I could get it back into fantasy a little. Also because this is more diverse, which I did appreciate. There's also a lot of characters that use Sissy pronouns, which I adored, obviously. But you follow this main character who, she's a captain on a ship, and she has this magic where she can control the tides, and she's paid to get this one person from one city to another in 20 days. So she has to travel through the open seas instead of going through the coast. This person is kind of like, the person she transports is kind of this like tortured soul that is kind of a god as well. And it just has so many fucking fantasy tropes. It has the kick-ass female character that we think is super strong because she exhibits male traits. We have the the tortured boy soul who is dark but mysterious, and we slowly get to learn his humanity and who he is. Like, I don't know, it was just like, as someone who's read a lot of fantasy, I feel like I've seen all these characters before, but they did have a bit more depth, and I did appreciate the diversity, but honestly, it's just not for me anymore. I think my review of this is largely based on the fact that I don't read fantasy and I don't really like fantasy anymore, and it doesn't resonate with me anymore. And it made me sad because I know for a fact that if I read this 2 years ago, I would have fucking loved it. I would have adored this shit, and that makes me a bit upset. And instead, I wasted my time with not so diverse white author fantasy shit. The more I'm like with this look, the more I'm like just adoring it, okay? Ah! Yes, okay. After that, I picked up the audiobook for Ace, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen. First off, the audiobook is fantastic, and I recommend it because it's also read by Angela Chen. I am also asexual, so reading this really resonated with me, and also because Angela Chen's experience was very similar to my own and my own feelings about what it feels like being asexual. So not only was it talking about a lot of great things about, it literally is just what asexuality reveals about these things. Like, that is what the book is about, and I want every single person to read this book, because just like our society is obsessed with Black culture, our society is even more obsessed with sex. We are so fucking obsessed with sex, and I don't even want to get into like virginity and a lot of fucking bullshit. There's just, everything this book said was just fantastic, and I don't want to just read it. I give it 5 stars, loved it, and I think this is essential. Like, I think this is essential reading, and honestly, when people do like sexual education in school, I feel like this should be like, why don't people read like this sort of books in sex ed in school? Like, this would be so useful and so calming for all the teenagers struggling with many different things. It does sort of touch on arrow things as well, but not as deeply, but still, just recommend this. Like, just fucking loved it. Yes. I also bought it for my mom, so, well, I didn't pay for it, I made her buy it for herself, so I don't know why I'm lying. I hope the quality of the video is still good, because the sun is going down. Alright, so the next book I picked up is Taking on the Plastic Crisis by Hannah Testa. This was so great. These pocketbook collectives are fantastic, and I don't know why this one isn't more popular. Like, so many have read like Audiobooks, Amazing Little One, and I'm not saying you shouldn't read that one, but I feel like people should also be reading this one, because there's like only 140 people who read it, and that is criminal. So Hannah Testa started, I think when she was 13 or something, she started this thing called Hannah for Change, which is an organization that focuses on educating about plastic and also taking plastic away from oceans and all that stuff. This was just really great. It's weird how people like Greta become really famous, but Hannah's not as famous, but she maybe does more like actual action-wise, without having any stats on that, of course. But a very brief but just fantastic overview of why plastic is such a problem in our society. Wait, I highlighted quite a bit of things. Okay, so this is, I can't believe this. Okay, 300 million tons of plastic are produced each year around the globe, which is nearly equivalent to the weight of the entire human population every year. If that doesn't fucking terrify you, what's even more troubling is that almost half of that production is designed to be used just once and then thrown away. And even though we don't see it once it's disposed, it's never really gone. Humans have filled the planet with plastics that don't degrade. And while plastic has made our lives convenient in many aspects, that convenience comes with a steep price, the potential to destroy the planet. So it goes on. I highlighted a lot of stuff. I think this book is fantastic because it's so focused on just plastic. And it also talked about how much plastic we consume as humans, which is disgusting, just from like drinking from plastic bottles and stuff, and how it can be detected in our blood. So that's also just disgusting in itself. But it also goes on to tell you like this, hey, this is what you can do. So it's short, optimistic, to the point, and I just recommend checking this out. After that, I picked up Full Disclosure by Cameron Garrett. I started this in physical format. It's a YA contemporary, which is something I don't really read that much of either. So I was a bit intimidated by this. This follows our main character, Simone, who is HIV positive. She's adopted and has 2 daddies. I think both her friends are, she has one bi friend, one gay friend who is also ace. So the diversity in this book is just... Regardless of that, I'm gonna take a cup of coffee. Sip of coffee. Damn, girl. I think I would give this a much lower rating if I didn't read it physically. I gave it 3 stars. I'm really glad I read it, but again, this is just not my type of book, and I think that's the biggest reason why I didn't like it. But I think as a YA, I think this should be more popular, to be honest, instead of all these other, you know, I don't know. The person, oh, I forgot. The thing that sets off the plot is that she gets in this relationship with this guy, and then someone sends her a note in a locker saying like, hey, if you don't break up with this guy, like, I'm gonna tell the whole school that you have HIV. And so she gets really terrified and whatnot. Some things like, first off, she didn't try to find out who this person was at all. And second off, it was so obvious who they were. If you read this book and you like guessed from the get-go who it was, let me know, because I think it's super, super obvious. Like, to me, it was just like, I don't know, like, was just so obvious. So that whole mystery element just went completely out the window. On top of that, I didn't like how this was so focused on the romance. I wish it was a bit more focused on the friendship, even though it was. And at the end, Simone holds this beautiful speech in front of her whole school. Adored that. That was like top points for this book. But all in all, I kind of wish I would have followed her gay friend instead, or like if there's another book that Garrett writes following Simone's friend, I don't remember her name. I feel like I would be really interested in that, and then I might be able to relate to her more. But it's just hard to review books that were just really not for you, you know? Like, there's not much I can say on that. Okay, after that I picked up Braving the Wilderness by Brené Brown, The Quest for True Belonging and the Courage to Stand Alone. So this whole month, when it comes to zero waste, I've been trying to focus on mental health and self-care and find that joy in life again, because I've been a bit depressed. It's coming back. Reading self-help books, I know people are not into it. I am. Brené Brown wrote a book called Daring Greatly, which I'm not going to go as far as to say it saved my life, but it helped me through the worst parts of my depression. She's a vulnerability and shame researcher, and so she gives a lot of like data, but it's just also really fantastic. This one I gave 4 stars. It didn't touch me as much, and I also listened to it as audiobook, and I kind of, when I went back, I didn't remember all that much about it, but I think this book was just extremely relevant for our time right now, how belonging and where true belonging comes from, and how in a world where we are starting to define ourselves by categories and finding our tribes and getting and hanging out with people who are like us. And she says, like, although this sounds like it would make us feel more at home and feel like we belong more, we live in a time where with more division than ever. And so she kind of studies this and reflects on why that is. How can we, maybe the labels and the communities and the things are making more separation than they're bringing us together, and how we dehumanize people for what they say. Yeah, it talks a lot about shame and vulnerability, because that's what my girl Brené Brown does. She's very famous, but I think her book Daring Greatly is more powerful and I liked it more, but this was more accurate, I think, for what I was going through. And she talks about social media, but she also referenced Harry Potter a lot, and I was just like, ooh, cringing. And that's why I started reading this physically, and she's like, yeah, one of my great role models is J.K. Rowling, and I just love her as a strong, powerful woman, and I'm like, I'm gonna put down this for a second. So that's why I put it down many moons ago, and I picked it up again in audiobook format this month. But it did help me with certain things. Then I picked up another pocketbook edition. This is Concrete Kids by Amira Leon. So I don't read a lot of poetry, but I decided to pick this up because I bought all of these editions, and also I didn't know it was poetry. But this was good. You know when someone has an experience or writes about an experience that are so far from your own and not written for you at all, it becomes very difficult to feel connected and to the story. And I think my review of this, I gave it 3 stars. I also felt like she was trying a bit too hard. Like Leon was, yeah, just her poetry felt like she was trying a bit too hard, which is also like, who doesn't try when they write stuff? You just don't want it to come across, you know? But I did have some poems that I felt like I felt certain things, but she grows up in Harlem. She's adopted, I think, and I don't know. I feel like this would speak much more to if you have had a similar childhood to hers, but there were some really powerful ones as well. But it does talk about a lot about her growing up there and her trauma and that part of her life. Oh boy. After that, I listened to another audiobook. This is Sissy, a coming of gender story by Jacob Tabia. So the way I found this book, you're gonna be gagging, okay, by the end of this. You know the show She-Ra, right? There is one single non-binary character called, ooh, what are they called? Shit. Ooh, Double Trouble. So all of our favorite character of She-Ra, Double Trouble. I was really excited about Double Trouble because they're just like shape-shifting non-binary person, and I was like, I love the voice of Double Trouble, so obviously I had to check out who does the voice for Double Trouble, and it's Jacob Tobia, because I was reading their bio, and it's like, Jacob Tobia also has a book called Sissy, and then I recognized this because my friend Chloe, they had been reading it or wanted to read it, I think, so I was like, oh boy, I gotta listen to this. And so as I was listening to it, I imagined Double Trouble reading it to me because it sounds like their voice, and I was visualizing them when I was listening to it, which was just fabulous. This is a memoir about Tobia growing up, first coming out as gay and then coming out as coming of gender story, and gender non-conforming, non-binary. This is witty and fun and plays out all these different scenarios. Like, Jacob is really funny and quirky, and it is not so dark. I adored it. I gave it 5 stars. Tabia is my bae, so adored it. It is, I think if you liked Life as a Unicorn, you're really gonna like this one, and if you liked this one, you're really gonna like Life as a Unicorn. Okay, we have 4 books to go. This was the Murakami book of the month. This is Dance, Dance, Dance by Haruki Murakami. So this is part of the Rat Quartet. It is Hear the Wind Sing, Pinball 1984, The Wild Sheep Chase, and then this is the 4th one, Dance, Dance, Dance. This is my dad's favorite Murakami. He's read more than I have, and I was just really curious and excited to get into this because he told me it was sort of like a mystery. All of the books in the series is sort of like a mystery. Our main character is nameless, and he is our main character in all the books, but the weird thing about these books is that you can sort of read them in any order and understand the plot, or just read one book of them if you are interested in that one, and you'll sort of understand what's going on anyways. My favorite one is the previous one, A Wild Sheep Chase, which was in my best books of last year. This is the last book in the series, and you'll be very, very extremely disappointed to know that even though dance is in this title 3 times, there is 0 dancing. Murakami, what the fuck? What the fuck? You're gonna name a book Dance, 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 and there's gonna be no dancing? You're gonna tell me it's metaphorical dancing? What the fuck is metaphorical dancing? No. No. We want some real dancing in there, babe. Next time, okay? So this is about, he decides to try to find this girl Kiki who he had a relationship with in one of the previous books, and so he goes to this hotel called the Dolphin Hotel, and it turns out it's been renovated. It's magical realism, but it's not super magical realism. All these characters kind of end up dying, and he sees this path trying to connect what binds these characters together. I gave this 3 stars because in this one, it was very apparently sexist, but it was so obvious that I think it was on purpose. Like, it has to have been on purpose. There's no way, because sometimes I get confused in his books if he's sexist or if the characters are sexist. And it can be like a combination of both, but in this one, like, the main character is just so unlikable that I feel like he's doing it on fucking purpose, you know? Like, there's this one young girl who, she's 13, I believe, and he's like, oh, if I was your age, I would think you were super cute and would totally date you. And we're talking about a 35-year-old man hanging out with a 13-year-old saying that he would date her if he was also 13, which is ew. And on top of that, he says one time, why are you so upset? Are you like on your period or something? And then he goes on to say something about, don't worry your little pretty brain about it. Whew! I was pissed. That was too far. I love Murakami and I love his writing and just enjoyed every second of it, but this was a miss for me. And it's probably my second least favorite book of his before the Wind Up Bird Chronicles, which I didn't like at all. Then I picked up this one. This is What If This Is Heaven by Anita Moriani. So Anita Moriani is very famous for having a near-death experience. She had cancer and then she was basically doomed to die. She went to the other side, as you might say, or have a near-death experience. She experienced this pure joy, unconditional love, she calls it. And then she came back, and within 3 weeks, she was completely healed of her cancer. So it's one of those miracle stories, and she basically talks about everything she learned on the other side and what that says about life. And I decided to finally pick these up. I do have quite a lot of self-help books, but I just never get to them. But this month I was like, mental health, go ahead. And I really adored this one. She does have some opinions about why souls choose to come into the male or female body, and that it doesn't really always have to do with the soul having a gender, but that they have an energy, like a yin and yang energy, which I don't always agree with. There's loads of like trans men who have loads of yin energy. Maybe also she also said like they just want to have a certain experience when they go on Earth, which I'm down for. That could be true, but generally this is just really, really great. Did I give it 5 stars? Possibly. She's just amazing. I recommend the audiobook because she does narrate it herself, and she's not a writer per se. It's just like about how this is heaven right here, right now, and you have the power to make it that, and that you're perfect exactly the way you are. She kind of debunks the fact that you ever need to read self-help books. She's like, do not seek anything outside of yourself, like, and if you're depressed or you're sad, that's okay. Like, all you need to do is just accept yourself no matter what, and you'll be good to go. And she talks about unconditional love, and it's just, I love her. And also, oh yeah, I met her, and this is it signed to me? It has to be. Yeah, I met her and she signed it. The journeys my mom takes me on with all her self-help stuff. After that, I read War Girls by Tochi Onyebuchi. This was the book club pick for the Climate Fiction Book Club. I have together with Sim and Sage, and we've already done a live show. It was such a fun time. Thank you both for, inviting me to that. If you're watching this by some bizarre reason. I gave this 3 stars. It basically is about a future sci-fi fantasy futuristic Nigeria. It's the year 2175, and the world has been changed by war and climate change. There's radiation everywhere, and you're following these 2 sisters as they are 2 kind of opposite sides of this war. It is sort of like a retelling of the Nigerian Biafran Civil War. That's what it's based upon, and I recommend reading something about that before this, but I really just enjoyed the experience learning more about that. And I enjoyed discussing climate change stuff in this book with the other 2 in this book club. So I really recommend checking out that live show. It is on Sage's channel. I'll link it down below if you want to know more about that. But this was not for me. I gave it 3 stars, but my enjoyment was possibly lower. I should have read it quicker, because I read 40 pages every day, and it took me 2 weeks. And it was so long. Okay, last book. Whew. I feel burnt out right now. This is I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown. I also listened to this as an audiobook. It was recommended to me on someone Instagram. I asked for audiobook recommendations or nonfiction audiobook recommendations, and someone recommended me this. It's funny that this book is called Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness, because I've been watching a lot of Ariel from She Needs Diction. She's Diction. I'll link her channel down below. She's basically saying that she reads a lot of books by Black authors on racism that feels very targeted towards white people, which is understandable because racism is very much a white problem. I feel like this went into that category, that although like this book isn't really for Black people, it's telling her experience to kind of everyone who wants to listen. And I think as a Black person reading this, you might feel recognition and be like, yes, that happens to me too, it's exhausting, and that kind of feelings. But a lot of the scenarios that she talks about, that she's experienced, is very much there, I feel like, to tell white people, be like, don't do that. So I enjoyed this, and I'm always here to hear more Black experience. Oh, it's Blurred by Brene Brown and Glennon Doyle by, the author of Untamed. So as an audiobook, this was great. It was short, and I don't think I learned that much, but I really enjoyed listening to it and just hearing her perspectives on all these different things that she was experiencing that are very normal if you're Black. And those are all the videos, and this background is becoming very yellow because the sun is going down. Thank you guys so much for watching this. I know it's different, and sometimes I get different when I'm in drag. That is not on purpose, it just happens. Oh boy. But comment down below if you read any of these books, what your thoughts were on them, or any books that you want to talk about that you read in the month of February. I love you all so much. Thank you for watching. Sending all of you love, and I'll talk to you soon.